What is going on, Fourth and Inches podcast listeners? You got Stevie P. Kevin will be with us shortly, so we are going to get to it. Today is Tuesday night, waiver wires. So let's figure out that waiver wire, what we're going to do here. First, real quick, we're going to go over injuries like we always do on Tuesday. So right now, looking at it, what we got... we're just going to do relevant stuff from Sunday instead of going over everything like we normally do. So, Devontae Freeman was an undisclosed injury. They didn't really tell us what the hell happened there. So, I guess we're going to have to figure that out during the week and see what happens. But, it says he has a shoulder stinger, which lingered on for a few weeks, blah, blah, blah. But we're not sure. He played this weekend. Most likely going to play, this past weekend. He played, most likely going to play this weekend, but just keep an eye on that. DeMarco Murray with the knee injury is questionable. He was a limited participant in practice this week so far. Today so far. So I guess we will see what's going on with that. Des Bryant had a knee and an ankle injury. All we know from that is that, that he's day-to-day. So, definitely something we're going to have to keep an eye on. Julio has a lower leg injury. They didn't really specify. They just kind of said it was a lower leg injury, so I guess we're going to have to see. Most likely he's going to play. So, Mike Evans is not injured, but he did get that one-game suspension. We all saw what he did on the sideline, sticking up for his quarterback, but, you can't do that kind of shit in the NFL. So, Jamison Crowder has a hamstring injury still. Coach says he's day-to-day. It's definitely something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. He did, they said that he practiced a little bit last week, but, wasn't able to go. So, we're going to have to check on it this week and see what happens. Greg Olsen, his workload is increasing. He is going to be activated. They're saying this plan is to activate him on the 26th. So, activate him on the 19th, I believe. And then he'll be playing the weekend of the 26th. So, I believe that is week 12. November 26th, yes, week 12. So, should be playing that game. Pick him up now. We're going to talk about him today, but, if he's on your waiver wires, you might want to pick him up now, because next week everybody's going to feeding frenzy on him. So he's available now. You might as well be ahead of the curve. Jordan Reed, hamstring, day-to-day. He's got the questionable tag. Vernon Davis, hand, questionable. He should be okay. I don't think it's anything serious. Jameis Winston is out for the next at least 2 weeks. They kind of want to shut him down to see if they can get that shoulder right. So Ryan Fitzpatrick is the man there now, at least for the next 2 weeks. They don't have a bye the rest of season, so you don't have to worry about a bye coming up or anything like that. But for the next 2 weeks, at least, James is going to be out. Matt Bryan has a leg injury. Okay, so if you watch the game last week, he was on the sideline, kind of like holding his leg or looked like he was trying to stretch it out, or I don't know exactly what the hell happened. But it says here that he tried to make a 53-yard field goal in pregame warm-ups, and it tightened up on him. So, I guess we're going to have to sit and wait and see what happens with that. But, who knows? If you have Matt Bryant, you might want to invest some of your fab into a kicker. I wouldn't suggest you put a lot of fab money, but $1 or $2. But if you have Matt Bryant, make other plans, because we're not exactly sure what's going to happen. Or wait until Saturday if your league allows you to pick up on Saturday and see what happens, see if he's going to play or not, and pick somebody up just in case. Now we are going to go into our waiver wire. Like I said, Kev will be with us shortly. So bear with me, guys. My computer is loading. Alright, so I'm going to go over the names that I'm kind of looking at. Kev might have some other names, but for right now, Danny Woodhead, He's owned in 24.4% of Yahoo leagues. He, is going to be back. I just read an article today saying that he was saying that he might not be back week 11. That's what they're targeting. So, might want to keep an eye on that, but I would still pick him up. He's worth a pickup. You saw how they used him in the beginning of the year. I know he got hurt very early into the season, very first week actually. But, they were throwing the hell out of the ball to him. So it looks like, Flacco likes to throw to his running backs, and Danny Woodhead should be the benefactor of that when he comes back. Deion Lewis is still only owned in 36.4% of leagues. Please get him owned. Orleans Darkwa is 41.2%. He was actually dropped a lot this week. I actually noticed that. He was dropped. So, seems to me like a guy that is getting the heavy workload of all the backs there. The Giants are just god-awful team, but, he's getting a heavy load. Damian Williams didn't do much this weekend. So, he's 23.6% owned. Let's see what happens with that. Thomas Rawls is 15.3% owned with Eddie Lacy getting hurt. Might be somebody you want to look at. Yeah, for me, I have no faith in Eddie. In Eddie. I'm freaking drawing a blank here, but Eddie Lacy. But if you want Rawls or Lacy, have fun with that. They won't be on any of my teams personally, but some people are more desperate than I am at running back. I never leave myself that desperate at running back. So if you are desperate, hell, throw them in there, see what happens. All right, so tight ends. I already said Greg Olsen, 44% even. Please get him. Tyler Croft, 39.2%. Somebody definitely want to pick up. He's getting targets in a team that looks like is going to have to be throwing the ball a whole lot because they are not any good. Wide receiver-wise, you have Corey Coleman. Should be coming back in the next week or two. Well, I actually think he's allowed to be activated on week 11, so 2 weeks. We'll see what happens with that. But, he's the number one wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns. He's actually got some talent. So, I definitely would pick him up. He's 7.4% owned. Robert Woods, we all saw the game he had this weekend. Looks good. He is 26.2% owned. Marquise Lee is 34.8% owned, the number one in Jacksonville, and he looks pretty good. He played very well this weekend. Robbie Anderson is 46.8% owned. He's clearly the number one in the Jets, and their passing offense is not as terrible as everybody thought it was going to be. Me and Kevin have been saying that for weeks, so why not? Corey Davis, I'm not going to bang the drum for him anymore. If you guys don't pick him up, it's your loss. Honestly, for me, he is might end up being a number one and win you a fantasy championship if he continues to get healthy and stay healthy. Kid's got immense talent, and you saw the sideline catch this weekend. That's enough said. If you don't want to put him on your team, then that's you must have really good wide receivers. Terrence Williams is 7.1% owned. If you're very needy, he looked good this weekend, but I think that was just kind of the Chiefs give up a crazy amount to number two wide receivers, and he is the number two there, so it is what it is. Josh McCown and Jared Goff are the two quarterbacks that I'm looking at to pick up this week. We all saw what Jared Goff did to the Giants. That game was a hell of a train wreck. And, it is what it is. You're going to have to put in for him now, because if you need a quarterback, he's probably the best available in your league. Josh McCown might actually have more points. Let me see here. And there's actually Kev right now. Alright, everybody, Kev is here. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, Stevie P? What's going on, listeners? How's everybody doing out there?
Alright, guys, so Kev is with us now. I just briefed him on everything we went over. And, I gave you guys all the names. We're going to start talking about these guys. And so we'll start with running back. So if you guys remember the running back list, it's Danny Woodhead, Dion Lewis, Darkwa, Damian Williams, and Thomas Rawls. Which guy you want to tackle, Kev?
I'll get into Thomas Rawls, I guess, a little bit, just because he's a guy I own in a couple different leagues. I think that Thomas Rawls going forward may only be somebody you're picking up for a week-to-week type of situation. Last week, Eddie Lacy was supposedly going to be the guy going forward. I saw a lot of reports, and then he goes down and gets hurt this week. So it makes Rawls look really, really attractive as a pickup. But understand if you're picking him up, it could only be a week-to-week thing while Eddie Lacy's hurt. But this week, I believe Eddie Lacy's going to actually not play because it's a Thursday night game against Arizona. So I think that with that looking like the case, I think Rawls is going to see a lot more of the running back action. So if you need somebody to fill in for a bye week this week, I think Rawls is a good pickup.
I hear that. Like I said, guys, it's not somebody that I really want on my fantasy team, but like Kev said, if you really need him, you know what I mean, it's a situation where, we have, so many injuries in fantasy football this year that, I could understand if you had, you could be a team that had, Cooks go down on you, have David Johnson go down on you, and you've just been trying to piece it all together all season long. And, Thomas Rawls, if he's going to get the start, like Kev said, why not? Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations, like you just said, where, you could have had David Johnson, Dalvin Cook. We've talked about it before, Steve. I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast or off, where, imagine if you had that draft where you went, Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley, Leonard Fournette. It's like your running back situation looks great. Whereas, you could also look at it from the other aspect of it, where you could have went, David Johnson, Dalvin Cook, and
Ty
your
Montgomery.
running back situation. Yeah, Ty Montgomery.
Yep.
Your running back situation is looking really weak right now. So definitely, if you're looking for a bye week fill-in, that's all I think Thomas Rawls is. He's kind of like a week-to-week starter, just until Eddie Lacy gets back. But I don't think either one of these guys is taking over the role. Eddie Lacy was getting reports about taking it over, but then he goes out and gets hurt. So, you can't just rely on either one of these Seattle guys.
Yeah, exactly. They're like we said, they're bye week fillers, not guys that we're relying on at all the time.
No, not for long term. Not for long term.
Exactly. All right, guys. So the next guy that I actually want to talk about, let me see here. So, let's see. I mean, Dion Lewis, we've been talking about him so much, and I still can't believe how low owned he really is.
I totally agree.
It's just, I'm not going to continue to beat the drum for the guy, but Jesus, it doesn't make any sense with how low this guy is. It's like I went over the numbers with you guys, and right now he is, 36.4% owned. You know what I mean?
Which is a joke.
Yeah, it's a joke. You know what I mean? Like, if Thomas Rawls is 15.3% owned, right? Eddie Lacy, let's see what Eddie Lacy is right now. Well, he was probably dropped because he got hurt this week, but let's see what he is. So, Eddie Lacy is, bring it up, he's 35.8% owned. He's 1% less owned than Thomas Rawls.
Well, yeah,
I mean, than Dion Lewis.
Dion Lewis, yeah.
Yeah.
And Dion Lewis's production, especially
way better.
Said, way better. It's not even close. He actually, I think I looked up his stats the other day. I think even in his last game, he got something like 19 carries or something like that, where it just shocked the crap out. Let me see. His game log, 15 carries. Yeah, 15 carries for 44 yards, which isn't a great run, yards per carry average, but if you got a guy getting the ball that many times, he's going to be a guy that you, especially in the offense, you definitely want on your team. I don't understand why he's at the 36th percentile.
I hear you. It's just, like I said, I'm not going to go crazy into talking about him, but he's getting the work. He should be owned in way more leagues. It is what it is. But the other guy I want to talk about is Orleans Darkwa. He's 41.2% owned. I'm going to go into his stats a little bit. We all know he had that huge game against the Broncos. And that kind of made him shine. But against the LA Chargers, he was 8 for 69 and a touch. Against Denver was the big game we just talked about. He was 21 carries for 117. And then against Seattle, he was 9 for 35. If you guys remember, they were kind of getting their ass romped in that game. So
yeah.
And then the bye week, and then last week against the Rams, he had 16 for 71, and they were also getting their ass romped. So, to me, this is a guy who is being productive. 14 points. He had, let's see here, and he's catching the ball a little bit too, surprisingly. He has 1 for 13, 3 for 13, 2 for 8, and that's not great numbers, but, in a PPR league like we talk that we do, all of our stats are PPR. That's an extra 2-3 points a week he's giving you.
Exactly, plus the yardage, so it could be an actually 4 or 5 points.
Exactly.
And, everything counts.
Exactly.
When you start looking at the landscape of fantasy points.
Yeah, so this is a guy that should be owned in more leagues, especially in PPR leagues. He's, there's not enough good running backs out there for anybody to say, oh, you know what, screwed Orleans Darkwa. I don't want a number one running back for a team. You know what I mean? That's basically where we are at this point.
Exactly.
How do you feel about Damian Williams, Kev?
I actually was getting ready to look his stuff up. Let me see here.
This week he had 7 for 14.
Situation?
He was 7 for
7 for 14. He was way more active in the pass game. He had the touchdown.
Yep, 6 for 47.
It looked like
touch.
Kenyon Drake was getting more of the running backs. The more of the rushing attempts.
Mm-hmm.
This situation going forward is kind of tough to it's kind of tough to predict because you never think the offense didn't look terrible, but it didn't look great the other night either. When it comes to this situation, I think like this week I actually in our league started Kenyon Drake just because I was just like really low on bye weeks. This was a bye week killer for me, but it actually panned out. He had 17.3 points in our league. Now in our league, Damian Williams had 18.8 points. So both of those guys actually produced rather well. But can you count on it going forward? Who knows? This could have just been a week where they didn't play the greatest of defenses. Me personally, I would rather have Drake over Williams, but that's my personal opinion. How do you feel?
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's really hard to rely on, like Kev said, on any of these running backs. I feel like if you're in a standard league, Drake is the no-brainer to me. But if you're in a PPR league, like we talk about all the time, I feel like either one of these guys could be viable. You know what I mean? So, to me they're matchup-based starters, and if you need them for bye weeks. So when they're playing soft run defenses, let's go over their numbers real quick and figure out.
I was getting ready. It says the breakdown was mimicked Sunday against the Raiders and resulted in productive lines for both running backs, picking up 37 of 67 offensive snaps. So that was Drake. Drake got 37, and I guess Williams, it doesn't say he got, it could have went no running back set, so not necessarily mean he got the other 30 snaps, but,
so
Drake obviously had more of the offensive snaps for the team.
Yeah, they have a weird schedule.
He actually did have 30 snaps, so they actually had a running back in on every snap.
Yeah.
So it looks like Williams had another 30. So it was basically kind of like a 55-45 split between Williams and Drake.
Yeah. So I'm looking at it here, and if you guys look at the numbers, I mean, if you guys look at the teams they're playing, so this week they got Carolina. Carolina's been a good run defense all the year, so I don't know if I'm starting them up there. But, and the week after that, they have Tampa Bay and New England back-to-back. I could see you using those guys there. Then they have Denver. We got to watch Denver because Denver really...
Who knows?
They really just... They don't look engaged in football, They don't look engaged in football, so...
Well, I mean, the defense, obviously, to me, just quit this week.
Yeah, definitely.
Everybody kind of knew what Brock Osweiler was.
Mm-hmm.
So when he came in and didn't get it, he didn't look any better than Simeon. It just, the defense looked like they literally quit on the team. And like Steve said, that's something to watch going forward to see how they respond. They got a lot of pride, so maybe they come back out and just decide that they're going to, try to be that same defense they were, for the early part of the season. I think before this week, they were the number one defense. So
exactly.
Hopefully they come out and play with a little bit of pride. But like you said, that's just something you got to watch is see how they respond to this ass whooping and they just took.
Yeah, you're not lying. And then after that, they have New England again. So they have New England twice in a 3-game span. So
that's good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And they got Buffalo and Kansas City. Kansas City's like middle of the road, but Buffalo's actually a good run defense. So, if you ask me, you could probably start these guys. Let's say Denver. That was just an aberration game.
I was going to say maybe 4 or 5 of the 7 weeks left.
Exactly. So, definitely guys that you could spot start in situations.
Obviously.
So, go into the tight end. So I talked to you guys about Greg Olsen. If you can get him now, you're going to have to because I think next week, everybody knows he's coming back week 11. Or he will be cleared week 11. So if you don't get him in this waiver wire next week, somebody's going to pick him up.
Yeah, so, definitely.
And
definitely, if Greg Olsen I feel like a lot of leagues nowadays have IR spots where Greg Olsen probably should have been. If he wasn't in an IR spot, I don't know why. Because with the tight end position being so weak, having Greg Olsen come back around, week 12 when you're heading into the fantasy playoffs could just be so valuable for you. Especially if you've been rolling out guys like maybe like I don't know, like a Jared Cook or somebody like that who's been off and on here and there.
Yeah,
you get Greg Olsen, who's right now going to be Cam's number one target.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely feel like if you dropped him instead of putting him on an IR spot, you're crazy.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So like Kev said, if you've been riding the waiver wire for tight ends all season long because you lost him, or you maybe had whoever you had at tight end. Let's say you drafted Austin Hooper, thinking this would be his breakout season, and he didn't pan out for you. I honestly, depending on how much fab you have, let's say you have $50 of your original $100 fab, I might spend all that $50 on him because if you have good running backs and you have good wide receivers, and you have a good quarterback, and the really only weak position on your team is tight end, he could be the difference maker for you, especially because Cam, he only has Funchess. If you looked at that, if you watched that game, I actually watched that game today, and Cam was just focused on Funchess. Like, he was legit, like, throwing to Funchess a lot.
I mean, if you look, like, I don't know how many targets he had in the game, but I definitely know what you mean. The dude was highly targeted in the game.
Yes, he was. And, if that's the case, so Funchess had 5 catches for 86 yards, but he had 11 targets. 7 targets? I think I had to see 11
CBS
here.
says 7, but maybe they may just, certain overthrows and stuff they may not count.
Yeah. So, you know what I mean? It's one of the situations where, when he comes back, we all saw what he did when, this dude went down what's his name? Oh man. Benjamin went down 2 years ago. Yeah. He was just loaded with targets.
A monster, yeah.
So, I would definitely spend some money on him. How do you feel about it, Kevin?
We're still talking about Olsen, right?
Yes,
definitely. Like I said, Greg Olsen should definitely be picked up. like you said, if you're left with $50 and you need a tight end, I would literally throw all that 50 on there.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
at
agree.
this point, like, I mean, you know, you're at a point now where tight end is like we've been saying all year, is such a wasteland. It's so inconsistent unless you have maybe Kelsey, Ertz, and Gronk. It's so inconsistent, and you're going to get one of the most consistent players at that position.
Yep.
I think Greg Olsen should be definitely picked up if you're in search of a tight end.
Definitely. All right, guys. So, how do you feel about Tyler Croft, Kev?
Well, he's a guy I brought up a couple weeks ago that was really putting up good production, solid production. It was, it seemed like he was, just filling in nicely for once they actually viewed Eifert as being out. It seemed like they just basically said, all right, this is the guy we got to go with. And, when it came down to it, he was putting up okay numbers. Like if you look at the stats, week 4 he had 6 for 68 and 2 touchdowns. That was the first week where they actually pronounced him the starter, I think. But then again, that was also against Cleveland. Buffalo, he goes 4 for 38. Pittsburgh 4 for 23 and a touchdown. 5 for 46. This week he gets kind of like, I guess, a 2 for 79, which was, whatever. But overall, like, I think Tyler Croft is in that 10 to 12 range of tight end where, he's not going to be somebody that is going to blow your team up, but he's going to at least give you something to where your team is not going to fail. So if you're, like I said, if you're in search of a tight end, I said Tyler Croft was a good pickup, a couple of weeks ago. I still feel the same way, but literally only if you're, looking for a tight end in that should be in that 10 to 12 range. Don't expect Tyler Croft to go in there and be putting up top 5 fantasy numbers because that's not what he's going to do. But like I said, he's going to give you, if you're looking for a solid 10 points in a PPR league, I think he can get you, 9 to 12 consistently.
I hear that. I agree. Now, just looking at the matchups, he's got Tennessee this week, good matchup. Denver next week is a good matchup. Cleveland,
tight end is definitely great matchup.
Yep, Cleveland is a good matchup. We've been telling you on Cleveland. His last game against Cleveland, he was 6 for 68 and 2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns. Yep.
Yeah. So, and then after that, I think for the next 3 weeks, you can
Pittsburgh,
definitely use
Chicago,
him.
Minnesota, yeah.
Exactly. Pittsburgh, Chicago, Minnesota, Detroit. So in those games, I think you're just kind of looking for his safe floor, and his safe floor is probably, like Kev said, 10 points. But in the next 3 games, he could have some, top 8 finishes.
Some good weeks, yeah.
Yeah. Could have some top 8 finishes. So, definitely a guy that I'm picking up if I'm in need of a tight end because he is not as owned as I thought he would be at this point in the season. All right, guys, so we're going to talk about some of these wide receivers. I actually have a wide receiver I have to put in there. We didn't say Bryce Butler, and Bryce Butler I actually like if Dez is out. So if Dez is out, I definitely think you could look at Bryce Butler. But we'll talk about the wide receivers. We have Corey Coleman, Robert Woods, Marquise Lee, Robbie Anderson, Corey Davis, and Terrence Williams, and Bryce Butler I just added. They're all less than 50% owned. So
you did bring up Robert Woods, right?
Yes.
Thought I heard. Okay, I was going to say.
Robert Woods.
We definitely got to talk about him.
26.2% owned, which to me is outrageous.
As another guy said a couple weeks ago, you definitely should be picking up.
Yeah.
Real quick before we get into these, just Mike Evans, it just came down. His suspension was actually upheld. Yeah. So Mike Evans will be out this week.
Yeah. Unfortunately, guys.
I'm curious how Mike Evans got suspended and AJ Green didn't. But
yeah, I hear you.
Mike Green, AJ's out there throwing punches at people and whatever.
Yeah.
Who knows?
So I was actually reading an article, and the article actually said that I want to say 2 plays earlier, they had gotten into a little tussle, and Jalen got on top of him, and the way he kind of pushed off of his helmet. He like picked himself up, I guess, off of his helmet or something.
Oh, okay.
And that that pissed him off a little bit. Exactly. And then when he pushed him down, that set him off. So I think the league looked at it and probably was like, okay, he was he lost his cool, but he has a little bit of a reason.
Yeah, but I mean, I understand all that, but you throw punches, man. It is.
No, I hear that. I hear you. I hear you. But he's AJ Green, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But he's Mike Evans, man.
No, I hear you. I hear you.
I feel you.
Yeah, it was some bad.
Let's get back into these wide receivers, man.
All right, guys. So go ahead, Kev. You can go with your guy first. Robert Woods.
Yeah, Robert Woods. I said a couple weeks ago he was probably going to be a pretty good pickup because I like what the Rams are doing on offense. I've been saying it. They were the highest scoring offense pretty much since like week 5. They were putting up a crazy amount of points, and I've been saying the whole podcast, like, I want guys on good offenses that are putting up a lot of points. You saw this week what Robert Woods did. I mean, he 2 touchdowns. He had that one play where he just literally looked like he was the fastest player in the league. I mean, he just blew by everybody on that play.
Mm-hmm.
His total stat line for the week, 4 for 70 and 2 touchdowns. The guy just, like I said, when you're in a good offense and it's a team that's putting up a lot of production, that means there's a lot of points to go around. And those are the guys that you want on your fantasy teams. It's just a lesson I learned over years. Just by observing and talking to people. Most of the time, the teams that win fantasy championships have a lot of players that are on good offenses that put up a lot of points for themselves, because that usually means the players on those teams are putting up a lot of points, fantasy wise. So I like Robert Woods. I definitely think he needs to be owned in every league.
Yeah,
including 10-team leagues. Including 10-team leagues.
Yeah, I hear that. Okay, so this is kind of my basis of what I look for when I'm looking for wide receivers or any position. I like offenses that are on the field a lot. So ball control offenses. I told you guys numerous times. When you are in fantasy football, the more your team has the ball on offense, the more points they're going to put up. So, you want to have guys on those teams. And if you look at time of possession, this week it wasn't actually in the Rams' favor, but, that's only because they were scoring literally one-play touchdowns.
Yeah. Like, Jared Goff has 14 completions but has 311 yards. So
exactly.
Pretty
so, it's outrageous. But, if you have a guy on a team that especially because you look at Robert Woods' numbers, 26.2% owned, which to me is outrageous. But he looks good. He's catching balls and taking them to the house 50 yards. He's catching contested balls. He's catching, that was his first touchdown this weekend. But he's catching, he's catching balls that should be caught. So if you have guys on teams that are doing that, they should be owned, especially in PPR. I mean, guys who catch 5 or 6 passes a week are wonderful. They're wonderful to have on your team.
Absolutely, 100% agree, man. I definitely feel the same way.
Yep. All right, guys. So let's see here. So I just want to go over the time of possession numbers. So for the season, the Los Angeles Rams have the ball 30. Let's see here. Hold up. 30 minutes a game, basically. A little over 30 minutes a game. So, a little bit more than half the game they have the ball. But if you look at what they're doing, it's outrageous. So total offensive yards they already have 3,057 total yards, which is a lot. The league average right now is about 2,600. So, they have 400 more yards of offense. They're a team that has scored, they have 54 first downs on third down conversions. So, that's a really big number. That's basically half of their third downs they're converting. That's a really good stat you want to look at. And then they're giving up only 10 sacks. They've given up 10 sacks this season. So, you know what I mean? They're just an offense that's clicking. They have 27 touchdowns. The league average right now is 18. So, it's just they're going off, and you want to have guys on those teams that are productive.
Absolutely, 100%.
So, the guy I want to talk about is Robbie Anderson, and I am going to beat the drum here a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
This guy has done nothing but produced the last month and a half of the season, and nobody seems to want this guy on their team. I don't understand why.
Yeah.
It just makes, I guess, and it's the same thing me and Kev were saying the other day about the Jets. People see the Jets and they're like, oh, they suck. But listen to these guys' numbers for the past 4 games. And when I talk, guys, when I say, okay, this guy's been great, I look at the past 4 weeks because, the NFL is a quarterly system. No team plays as good in September that they do in November, or you know what I mean. They get to gelling and they play better. And just listen to the numbers. He's 4 for 76, 3 for 35 and a touchdown, 6 for 104 and a touchdown, 4 for 48 and a touchdown. The guy's had 3 consecutive games with a touchdown, and the rest of his season schedule is beautiful. He plays Tampa this week. Next week he's on a bye. Then he's got Carolina, Kansas City, Denver, New Orleans, and the Los Angeles Chargers. So, to me, the only really game that I'm thinking, the only 2 games that I'm like, they could be tough is New Orleans, because New Orleans has Lattimore, and he's been playing fantastic. Yep. And Denver. You know what I mean? But the guy is still getting targets. You know what I mean? You have 1, 2, 3 games before he plays Denver that he's going to have a beautiful matchup. So if you can get him, please just pick this guy up.
Dude, I would say I'm gonna say I was completely wrong on Robbie Anderson, because I was one of the guys saying I don't want nothing to do with him. And then it's funny because 3 weeks ago my brother picked him up in a league, in one of the leagues I'm in with him, and I just was trashing him like, why the hell would you want this guy? Like, why? Like, he's a Jet. They're not going to do nothing. It was the same thing we were talking about last week, where I just kind of had to flip the script and look at what was going on over there. And I just pulled up Robbie Anderson's stats a minute ago, and he's got double-digit fantasy points every week for the last 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. You can't ask for more than that from guys that you're basically picking up off of the waiver wire. Like, you're getting guys off the waiver wire. He's got his last 4 weeks. He got a 12, a 13, a 23, and a 15 in a PPR league. Those are numbers that you're really, like I said, you can't ask for more than that from guys that you're picking up off of the waiver wire. So,
totally agree.
When you're looking at that, and like you said, targets are a big factor when it comes to wide receivers. If you got guys that are getting 8 to 10 targets a game, regardless of what team they're on, nowadays in the NFL, like, so many teams are scoring points. So 8 to 10 targets from a guy like Robbie Anderson on a team that's the Jets that seems better than what we all thought they were going to be. I definitely pick up Robbie Anderson. He should be owned same as Robert Woods. He should be owned in just about every league.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
So you have anybody else you want to talk about, Kev? Are these guys?
Out of the guys we brought up, I mean, I'll say this. Corey Coleman was a guy you threw out there from the list that we were looking at. I don't want anything to do with the Browns guys. All right, the Browns. They don't even know who their quarterback is. It's like taking Kaiser out of the game every time he sucks, which is like half the games that they played. It's just such a bad situation over there. It's funny because I was reading. At me being an Eagles fan, I'm always going to thank the Browns for Carson Wentz. But I'm looking at that. I didn't even think about this year that they traded away the pick that got Deshaun Watson. Like, you guys are just a terrible franchise.
Yep.
And it's just, when it comes to evaluating quarterback talent, they just have no, like, their scouting department is just terrible when it comes to quarterback scouting. And that is such an effect. That has such an effect on guys like Kenny Britt, Corey Coleman, and even Isaiah Crowell and Luke Johnson and guys that just, it's just a mess over there. I have nothing. I want nothing to do with Browns players.
I hear that. For me, Corey Coleman is a very talented wide receiver.
In a bad situation.
Yes, in a very bad situation. Against Pittsburgh in the very first week, he got hurt actually in Indy. It says here, Baltimore, he had 1 catch for 9 yards, but he actually got hurt, I believe, in the Indy game. But against Pittsburgh week 1, it was 5 for 53 and a touchdown. Those are not amazing stats. He did get you the touchdown, but, for me, like Kev said, he's in a situation where you're worried about it. But the one thing I could say that I guess is a little bit of a saving grace if you do pick him up. They're on bye. Well, they were on bye last week, so they come back this week. They got Detroit at home, which he's not playing in this game, so he's going to be activated, they're saying, for week 11. So they play Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. So most likely you're not playing him against Jacksonville. But then he's got Cincinnati, he's got the Chargers, he's got Green Bay, Baltimore, Chicago. So,
good matchups.
Exactly. He's got a couple of good matchups in there, so if you're a wide receiver desperate, maybe pick him up and see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, I just, the matchups are good, but I just can't see you playing any Browns wide receiver with the fact their quarterback situation is just terrible.
I hear that. And the only guy I want to talk about here is, Terrence West and Bryce Butler. I'll just package them together. If Dez is out, they're going to have to throw targets to somebody. Cole Beasley, I would add to that list, but Cole Beasley, for me, is kind of a desperation play if you need something. He's funny because he's got 4 touchdowns on the year, and in two different games he scored 2 touchdowns. But his yardage and catch totals are terrible. He's 3 for 33, or 3 for 32, 4 for 33, 1 for 4, 3 for 17, 4 for 23, and 2 touchdowns against Green Bay. Then he had the bye. Then he had 1 for 24, 2 for 8, 4 for 24, and 2 touchdowns. And for me, that's just not production that I want to even bother to pick up. So I didn't mention him here. But with the other 2 guys, Bryce Butler is a deep threat. He's had some good games this year, and Terrence Williams is somebody that I've been hearing for years and years that he's going to be good this year. He's going to be good this year. He's going to be good this year, and he's just never any good. Last week he had a good game, but that's because Kansas City gives up the most points to number 2 wide receivers. So they're just a great matchup for number 2 wide receivers. So I don't buy anything into what I saw last week. And, these guys are desperation pickups for me.
100% agree. The one thing with them, opposite of what Corey Coleman see, while they may not have all the talent, I really think Dak is a good quarterback. Last year I was basically beating the drum for the Eagles to go Ezekiel Elliott in the first and draft Dak in the third. And people thought I was crazy, and Cowboys did it, and it seems like they just are going to resurrect their franchise for the next 10 to 15 years. At least, like I said, they got a good quarterback, whereas a guy like Corey Coleman doesn't. But, if I was to have to choose between one of those 2, me personally, I think that Bryce Butler's talent is better than Terrence Williams.
Yeah, I agree.
I've seen Bryce Butler make some nice plays, whereas Terrence Williams has kind of been a shot in the dark. So if I had to choose and pick one, I would go Bryce Butler. But I think I'm like you. I think they're both kind of – I'm kind of staying away from both of them.
I hear that. All right, guys, so with the quarterback situation this week, there's not really too many quarterbacks that I would be recommending you pick up. There's a couple of guys that are less than, 50% owned. The guys that are less than 50% owned that are basically available, I'll just say a couple of names, but they're not really. Jameis Winston is now a guy who's under 50% owned. Let's see. Let me see here. All right, so you got Jared Goff at 48.8%. We just talked about him, and he should definitely be owned. You got Eli Manning. 100% agree. Yeah, Eli Manning, Andy Dalton, basically Jacoby Brissett, all the guys that we've been saying for weeks and weeks. But really the only guy that I can recommend and feel confident in is probably Josh McCown and Jared Goff. They're really the only two that I could recommend, and I feel confident telling you guys to pick those guys up. For me, Andy Dalton has proven that he is a matchup-based starter. He's been really, really bad this year. And I know Tennessee seems like a good matchup, but they've actually played much better the past 3 weeks. And I don't know if I trust Andy Dalton to go there. This week I'm starting A.J. Green because A.J. Green, Tennessee gives up a lot of points to the number one wide receiver, but just because AJ might have a big game, I don't know if I trust Andy enough to put him on this list. But the guy I want to talk about is Jared Goff. He would be my number one waiver priority. We talked about how much the Rams are scoring, and they seem like they're a playoff team that really is legit. They might win their first and first 2 games in the playoffs. They look that good. So If that's the case, they're a team that's on the rise, and I think you could pick up Jared Goff. And honestly, of all the quarterbacks that are under 50% on, I think he's the one that you can pick up and actually play rest of season if you absolutely had to.
100% agree. 100% agree. I was actually in the situation, and I kind of I kind of scoffed at it, I should say, when I was looking at it. I don't want to say scoffed. That's a bad word choice. I kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, we can probably figure out the word as I say the situation, but I have Cam Newton in one of my leagues, and Jared Goff was on the waiver wire, and I was looking, and I was like, you know what? I may want Goff over Cam for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it, and I kind of paid the price for it this week because in that league, I lost by 11, and Goff outscored Cam by 12. So, it was one of those situations where you look back and somebody else actually picked up Goff later on that week. And, now I can't even grab him, and I'm kind of upset about it. But, yeah, I totally agree. One guy I don't think we touched on at all, at least I know, I don't believe we have, is Teddy Bridgewater. How do you feel about Teddy coming back?
See, for me, I didn't really like Teddy when he was healthy. The thing with Teddy is Teddy is a good NFL quarterback. I think he can win games in the NFL, but for fantasy purposes, he's not a very athletic quarterback. A lot of people assume that he's athletic, and if you watch him, he's not a very athletic quarterback. He can get out of the pocket and get out of situations, but he's not going to run for 10, 12, 15. He's no Cam Newton, let's put it that way.
I was going to say, honestly, I think that's kind of a stigma that's thrown on all black quarterbacks.
Yeah.
It's just that they're automatically, mobile and athletic, and that's not always the case.
Exactly.
But, my thing is, I don't think Teddy's necessarily had the talent around him that he has this year.
Yeah.
I think Adam Thielen has come on and is a really good receiver. Stephon Diggs was looking like a beast. He kind of slowed down, but hopefully coming out of the bye week is a little healthier and can kind of resort back to the way he was playing. But I just think that his talent around him is so much better right now than it has been, and that could actually lead to him being a lot better as a quarterback and as a player.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I definitely think his talent is much, much better. So I agree with that point.
Yeah.
It's a wait and see for me personally. I'd rather have Jared Goff, and if that's the case, I would definitely rather have him.
Oh yeah, I would definitely have Jared Goff. It wasn't a situation where I was saying pick up Teddy over Goff. It was I think I would, if I was hurting a quarterback, it would just be a shot in the dark that I might take a chance on.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys. So, is there anybody else you want to talk about, Kev?
Not really. Not really.
All right, guys. Well, I guess that's it for us tonight. We will be back on Thursday with our Thursday DFS podcast.
Is the ESPN trade deadline this Wednesday?
Yes, it actually. Well, if you are on ESPN user, their default is actually this Wednesday. So you might want to check that out. If you have trades that you want to make those trades and figure out what you want to do about that situation. But Wednesday is the default trade
Gotcha.
On ESPN.
Gotcha. So just keep
All right,
that in
guys.
mind, everybody, as you're going forward this week. And, if you have anything to get done, get it done this week.
Exactly. You can always hit us up with questions on our Facebook page. It's 4th and Inches, the number 4th Inches podcast, or Fantasy Football Podcast. And just leave your questions there, and we'll tell you if your trade is a good one or a bad one. All right, y'all. You guys have a good one, and enjoy football this week.
All right, take it easy, everybody.
All right, y'all. Peace. Let's get it.